Hey, what's up? Who better can explain Brazil if not a person who was born in it? And how can you possibly understand Brazil if you do not know how it really works from inside out? My name is Eliseu, yes, Elizeu. Let's get started. Brazil is well known all over the world for its beautiful women, I'd say gorgeous women, recognized worldwide, wearing tiny bikinis at the beach along Brazil, and with their tanned, curvy bodies all over. And every single year at a carnival parade, some of them just parades, going in and out, totally naked or half naked. Yes, that's right. Nonetheless, Brazil is in a sense a conservative country. And because of that, Jair Messias Bolsonaro, with his remarkable quote, "Brazil above everything and God above all of us," has won elections back in 2018. And he relied basically, essentially at this point here, in God, traditional family, of course, and Christian values. That's it. And when it comes to God, I say that this is something really important when it comes to the base of the mindset of the Brazilian society that decided to vote on him. And at this point here, I want to tell you that by using the support and gathering with the main pastors of important churches, I mean evangelical churches here in Brazil, he was able to capture the mindset of the general population that has been seen and sometimes has been suffering with some changes that has happened in a Brazilian society when it comes to the Christian values, those that we all know, the biblical ones, and sometimes also we'd say that these values are loosened. Let's say that, for instance, the patriarchal authority that has been lost along the last years, the last decades, due to many aspects, the evolution of society, but also the women empowerment that has led them towards more power to decide their own lives. And by doing so, they imagine that it's possible to raise their children without a man. And having this kind of situation, besides the political correctness, which means that in the last years, a lot of movements, not a lot of, but some movements, some important movements, those ones that claims, for example, the LGBT people and Afro-Brazilian ones, as well as the feminist movement, has these movements, in fact, have been trying to impose their agenda and also their mindset and their way of seeing the world and how they would like it to be. Although these movements are legit and they are fighting for a cause that they truly believe, the Brazilian society has been changing its way of thinking and seeing things since the last time we had here in Brazil the leftist party PT that tried not necessarily to impose, but to convince the majority or the whole society about its agenda. And Jair Bolsonaro captured the feeling of the society that wanted to change something about that. Maybe those ones that wanted to have a family, a society that is based on the Christian values. You know what I mean? And at this point here, we can also say that the evangelical churches, in fact, have been helping extremely, let's say, in a way that Jair Messias Bolsonaro was able to gather these leadership and these leaders towards influencing the members of this church. And I mean, the evangelical movement that in Brazil has been rising steadily year after year. But why is that? It is because, essentially, and let's put it this way, the Brazilian people sometimes, because of the social inequality and the sometimes inability to find and climb the social ladder, do not see them or do not see themselves attached and being part of the mainstream, you know, belonging to the mainstream. Belonging to the mainstream is one expression that we can use here to really understand how it really works. Because belonging to the mainstream means that if you are going to a church, I mean an evangelical church, and if you are belonging to this community, it means that you can be helped, you can be assisted. In any case, if you need a job, if you need food, if you need some money to look for a job, if you are unemployed, you can find a freelance job among these people that, let's put it this way, these people that attend frequently the church services. And of course, the pastors of this church, they have a chisel influence, an extremely important influence on the member of these churches, in a way that Jair Messias Bolsonaro was able to understand it and to explore it very nicely. And so he was able to be elected like that. And of course that for him it was important also to say that we are going to get free from socialism or communism sometimes and political correctness. And it means that he wanted to show to everybody that his ideas and his ideology was more towards those ones that were opposite to those ones that have been happening and going on along the last decades, you know. And what we can understand and what we can see here is he also had been suffering a lot of pressure towards going to the far wing. I mean, being able to recognize that not only the evangelical, but because of the Brazilian society is one that is, let's say, mostly Christian oriented, it is naturally, let's say, easy to understand that he had a speech that touched the heart of everyone that would like to have someone that praised God all the time. And he did it nicely, effectively, and let's say intelligently, you know. And it also explains why he turned to a way of thinking that made people understand that it was the best way of having someone who represented them, and that for the first time in history it was a person that was going to be elected saying the name of God clearly, openly. And that's the fact here, you know. He clearly defended that we need to get rid of abortion ideas, gender ideology, communism, socialism, and whatsoever that is totally linked to this kind of ideology and mindset. And he was able to do so, and he was able to capture the ideal of people in general. And for example, let's put this in another different way. When we are talking about the traditional family, it means a father and mother, daughter and son, or offsprings in general, you know. And it's not about having gay marriage. That this is exactly what he was, and he has been, in fact, totally against of. And this is another point that is very interesting that captured people in general, you know, because people, in a sense, in Brazil want to have a conservative family and conservative style of life, or lifestyle, if you prefer. That's why Jair Messias Bolsonaro was elected based on these Christian values fact. When it comes to criminality and gun ownership, I would like to address an issue here that is extremely important for us to understand why Jair Bolsonaro was elected. Back when he was just campaigning, you know, as a simple candidate that most of the time showed humility towards the way that he spoke and addressed issues, and saying that he didn't know too much about this or that, but he would like to learn, or he would like to appoint someone that really domained that issue and that specific position, something like that. It was very clear that talking about security, and I mean public security, he was the one that promised he would work effectively himself to get approved a bill. I mean, he would like the Congress to pass a bill allowing the police forces all over Brazil to be able to engage equally, effectively, effusively against criminals in many different places in Brazil that have been holding, and sometimes they are holding, long-haul rifles, shooting against the police, not respecting the law enforcement that the police is there to guarantee, and also the protection of the society. And he said that the human rights in Brazil, organization was just working, had been working and has been working just for the criminals and not for the society. Because of that, he said that if he would be elected and if the Brazilian society would give him the right to manage, to rule Brazil, he would engage himself towards having this kind of bill passed in Congress. But not only that, you know, he also said that he would like every single Brazilian, any individual that would like to have, of course, the ownership of a gun, because according to his idea, and at this point here it's very interesting and very important to understand, he said that he believed that every single individual should be able to protect oneself and protect immediately the other person that is around him or her by having a gun, because this way it would be created a sensation of full security and full public security for everyone, and also to guarantee the freedom of people in case of any kind of tyranny, or let's put government or someone that would like to take power in disadvantage of the society. And at this point, it's quite interesting that many women, you know, defended him because they believed that because they suffered too much with the domestic violence, they would be able to protect themselves against the violent men, and also they will be able to protect their children while going to school, while taking them to school or picking them up back from school. And the Brazilian people in general have been suffering too much with violence in Brazil, in a way that we've got 64,000 homicides back in 2017. you know. And what happens? Sometimes you are driving back to school, you are driving back home, you're driving to your job, you're driving to the shopping mall, to the beach, whatever you want, you will understand. And all of a sudden you need to stop at the traffic light, you know, at the red light, and someone comes knocking on a window and say that it's a robbery, and you have your life at a risk, at a gunpoint, and if you just dare to get scared or say something that this criminal wouldn't like to hear, you can be shot in the head easily, cold blood. This has been an awful situation, embarrassing one for every one of us, in a way that he was able to understand this feeling and this sensation of not being safe anywhere for anyone. And so he would like at that time to propose such kind of thing, and he was able to do so. Therefore, there were people, and there are people that live in the rural area, I mean in the countryside, that would like to protect their properties against some people that sometimes call themselves settlers from social movements and want to invade their property and sometimes kill their people inside of their property, but also any kind of animals that they are having, or any kind of harvest that they are able to any kind of crop that they are able to harvest soon, just because they want to be settled down, and they say that they must be given it, you know, one way or another. And because of that, these people also would like to have the right to possess guns and weapons as their property to defend themselves. Jair Bolsonaro at this point had a remarkable quote saying that a good criminal is a dead one. And of course that at this point here also he became famous worldwide by having his both hands with the fingers pointed to the air, folded hand, just resembling and portraying as if he was with a gun shooting someone or someone else, you know. And of course that this kind of speech cheered people up to vote on him because of his proposal towards this matter that was extremely important for Brazil to tackle violence. And this is one of the issues that most attracted Brazilian people to vote on him and to pay attention in his voice despite of the other circumstances. Because the violence in Brazil, it is an extremely serious problem. And then, let's talk a little bit about fighting corruption and the liberal agenda that were two important issues of Jair Bolsonaro when he was candidate for the presidency in Brazil. And when it comes to the corruption issue, more precisely, he had a quote, remarkable one too, saying that we are about to put away the old school politics because now we're going to do the no politics. But what is it exactly? No politics? What is no politics? He meant that he would like to manage to rule Brazil by not having any kind of agreement that would mean bribery for any state-owned company here in Brazil, or he wouldn't like to negotiate any kind of position, any kind of government managed body or institution just to negotiate, let's put it this way, illegally or under the table with any political party. Although he himself had been 20 years politician, and he had never had the opportunity to manage any kind of institution, public institution, or he had never been a governor or mayor or secretary of state or minister of state whatsoever. But he believed, and he said that he would be an outsider that had been 28 years in politics in Brazil. He was not exactly an outsider, but what is the most interesting part at this point here is that he was skillful to sell such idea, and people caught it just because along many years, but also in the previous years, since the demonstrations in 2013, when people went to the street with the movement, come to the street, and asking for the Jonas Rousseff's impeachment. And it was a movement that created a new mindset in the Brazilian society, because at that time it didn't matter what was your ideological spectrum, because everyone wanted to go to the street to protest, to demonstrate, to speak out whatever people wanted to say that was not able to be said previously, or at least was not good. But mainly because the economy was not very good at that moment. In fact, was terribly down. We had a downturn in the economy, and the crisis was extremely harsh, that people started not having money to pay almost anything. Let me give you an example. For instance, at that time it was very, very common that people was able, or at least seemed to be able, to buy a car. And this car was, let's say, paid or previously signed in a contract that you would pay in 6 installments. Yes, 6 installment, or if you prefer, 5 years long term. And what happened is that along the years, people started to lose their job, and world economy was starting to have a downturn, and China was not being what it was some years previously, and it started to reflect back here in Brazil, where people started not being able to pay off their debt towards their car installment, and the banks started to call people out to be paying their debt, but people didn't have money, and at the same time people couldn't pay the car insurance and couldn't afford to fuel the car to go somewhere else, or to pay the turnpike tickets or something like that. And it started to create a problem, because the same people that were lifted off from poverty to the rising middle class at that time were not able anymore to pay their simple debts, such as electricity bill, water bill, the installment of the cars. They stopped paying by the 30th, the 31st, the 40th installment, and that was a real problem that came together in 2013. And after that movement, it was very interesting to be noticed that people started to look differently to the leftist wing parties, mainly PT, that had been in power for about 13 years. And Jair Bolsonaro was seen at that moment as a person that was the outsider fighting against corruption, as Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was being accused of corruption allegations by Sérgio Moro. Yes, the national hero, Sérgio Moro, the federal judge that was nobody, or that nobody knew him, he started to be in the spotlight, let's put it this way, as he started to conduct nicely and let's say prosperously, the car wash operation, or in Portuguese, Lava Jato operation, when he was able to convict many executives, top executives, from many important companies, but mainly from the state-owned oil company Petrobras. And so Jair Bolsonaro promised to Sergio Moro that if he accepted, he would be nominated, he would be appointed as the Super Minister of Justice and Public Security. And so it was what happened. And on the other hand, let's say that Paulo Guedes was the one that was chosen to be the also Super Minister of Economy, as he had been a professor in Chile, and then he had the experience to be, and also the mindset of a liberal that would like to tackle the pension fund reforms in Brazil by also convincing the society and the Congress that this was the most important event and bill to be passed in order to reshape the Brazilian, let's say, giant state. And of course that he wanted also to decrease the public deficit, along the years, also eliminated taxes and fees and all kinds of burden costs of the Brazilian state, which is called Brazil cost, which means a lot of taxes that are charged, and some of them just means bureaucracy, not to be working properly and to make people really get engaged towards entrepreneurship. So, Paulo Guedes was called Posto Ipiranga, or the Ipiranga gas station, by Jair Bolsonaro, as everything that Jair Bolsonaro didn't know, didn't want to comment, or didn't want to know, or was not able to do so in terms of economy, he would say, oh, please call my Posto Ipiranga, call my Ipiranga gas station, so he would be able to answer it back. And of course that he was elected at this point here with a great advantage by promising that he would reshape the Brazil's economy. Although he didn't convince, he didn't persuade people that he would be converted, that this conversion to liberalism was really true. Otherwise, he is a traditional person, he was a traditional person towards conservative aspects of conduct and behavior in terms of economy and also the moral values as well. But this was what happens, and he was really understood and comprehended as the person to be chosen. And at last, let's talk a little bit, and in fact, let's talk about the anti-corruption, anti-establishment, anti-traditional media issues and rhetoric model by Jair Bolsonaro. He was extremely skillful towards calling people attention for this kind of media and segment that people in Brazil have been criticizing along the last years, mainly because we've been living all over the world in an era of social media trendy topics, and Jair Bolsonaro was skillful to use such kind of method to engage in himself and to cheer him up and to cheer people up to vote on him. WhatsApp, that's the quick messaging platform that was mostly used here in Brazil to promote him, promote his image, to try to persuade people to vote on him. Some of these messages were fake news. I myself have received some of them, some saying that there were a movement, a leftist movement, trying to create problems for his election and trying to impose gender ideology and LGBT mindset, mainly at schools, teaching the children to be someone else than they were born to be, and also saying that, for example, there would have been a probability that the electronic ballot box system would be compromised in order not to allow him to be elected, and also saying some of this fake news that there were people that maybe were able or trying to kill him. And at this point here, when it comes to killing, to assassination, he suffered, in effort of assassination back there in 2018, September 6th, by a guy called David Bispo. This guy was a kind of lonely wolf, let's put it this way, and he stabbed him. Fortunately, Jair Bolsonaro was able to be managed to a local hospital in Juiz de Fora city, in a rural state here in Brazil called Minas Gerais, and we now have him alive and president of Brazil. This was very nice, and this is very interesting because he was saved by the hand of a doctor that works at a public hospital by SUS, that is our national health system, of which I'm going to be talking about in another video, And at this point here, it's quite interesting to know that he was able to, and very successful, to campaign by using a simple cell phone, as I'm doing right now, with a simple wallpaper, in fact, a Brazilian flag, just one or another person by his side, and say simple things, showing himself as a humble person that would deserve the people's vote, but also people's reliability. And he got it. He was able to do so. This is the way that we Brazilian elected Jair Messias Bolsonaro. We gotta have some accountability right here. Precisely 57,797,847 people voted on Jair Messias Bolsonaro in October 2018. In Brazil, there are about 143 million people eligible to vote. And the population of Brazil right now is around 211 million souls. And the 57,797,847 people that chose 17 to vote in Jair Messias Bolsonaro in the electronic ballot box, were the ones that made it possible for his election and for him to be president of Brazil, as I explained it here. That's it for today. I'd rather gently like to ask you to hit the thumbs up in this video, leave your comments below, share this video with whoever you want to do so, and get yourself subscribed to this channel so you'll be advised when there will be new videos, and they will come for sure. Thank you very much. See you in the next Brazil Understanding video.